Hello and welcome to this History A-Level Skills video. This time we're going to be looking at the interpretation question, and in particular we're going to focus on what it is that the exam board wants you to show in your answer to the interpretation question and how to structure your answer to give you the best chance of demonstrating that. So we're going to look at some of those skills and we'll briefly look at some exemplar material. Okay, so the first thing to say about the interpretation question is that it's a Unit 1 question, only appears in Unit 1, but that in that exam it is a compulsory question, by which we mean there's no choice. You can't do this one or that one. There's just one question on option. Like all the questions in all the exams for your History A-Level, it's worth 20 marks and you're allocated 45 minutes of exam time in the actual exam. It's also going to be focused on a specific issue. So you know which issue it is. It depends on which route you're following. In Route A, it will be about the failure of the Fourth Crusade. In Route B, it'll be about some aspect of how revolutionary the Glorious Revolution was. And in Route C, it'll be about why the Soviet Union collapsed. And in this question, they're looking for different skills from you than in the source questions. These are their two aims. The first one is to that you would show that you understand that history can be viewed in more than one way, that it can be interpreted and has been interpreted by historians differently, even though they're reading the same events. So that our analysis of history varies, even though the facts remain the same. And then secondly, their aim is that you should judge between those views. It's very important that you reach a conclusion, and that's demonstrated here by having a quick look at the mark scheme. These are the three things that they are looking for in your response. So there in the blue column, extract interpretation. And you can see there in level 5 that you would interpret the extracts with confidence and discrimination. This is where you're pulling things out of the extract. In the middle column, your knowledge is used there, integrated with the extracts to show that you know what you're talking about. And then in the right-hand column there, the judgment, again, look at the bottom, sustained evaluative argument, and that you reach a fully substantiated judgment on the views given in both extracts. And that means that you reach a conclusion about which extract you think has the better argument. And that green column, that judgment, is based on the first two columns. So your extract interpretation, you understand what it says, you look at that in the light of your knowledge and you say, yes, the knowledge backs up that extract, therefore my judgment is that it's a good interpretation. Or you say, well, actually my knowledge about these events shows that this extract is not quite on the money, and therefore my judgment is that it's a decent interpretation but not the best of the two here. So let's have a look at what that means for your structure. Actually, let's have a look at what that means in the actual question. So you'll be given a question with two extracts from historians. One extract will agree with the issue in the question. The other extract will disagree. Actually, it's important to say here, it might be that they present a mirror image, like a disagree factor, but it might be that they think something more subtly different. So they might think that it was someone else that caused the failure of the Fourth Crusade or the collapse of the Soviet Union, or they might be on a completely different tangent. Likewise, in the how revolutionary was the Glorious Revolution, one extract might be saying it's really revolutionary, the other one might be saying it's not revolutionary, or it might be that one's saying it's really revolutionary, the other one's saying, well, you know, it was in this way, but not in that way, and just take a slightly different interpretation. So be careful with that. The example can't always find two extracts that knit so well together. Here is that just demonstrated in a Soviet Union question, and they'll always be written in this way. In the light of differing interpretations, how convincing do you find the view? So that's the standard opening. In this case, that the Soviet Union collapsed, or it could be that the Fourth Crusade failed, or it could be that the Glorious Revolution was revolutionary because of the consequence of Gorbachev's political reforms. So that is the interpretation from one of these two extracts. We'd expect to see them talking about Gorbachev, and the other extract would expect to be presenting a different interpretation for that, for why the Soviet Union collapsed. So then, in terms of structure, obviously at the start, an introduction. Introduction is pretty standard. It's like an essay introduction. You might have a line of context. It might be about the actual events that you're looking at. a line or a sentence of that. Then these are the important bits here, a brief summary of the main argument from each extract. Just as you would introduce the points you're making in an essay, here you're just outlining what the two extracts think and a statement of which extract you think has the better argument. Let's just briefly give you an example of that from this essay here. The Soviet Union fell on the 26th of December 1991 after many years of political, economic and social insecurity. That's the statement, the contextual statement of when it happens. You're showing off a little bit of extra knowledge there about knowing exactly when it fell, and you're setting up already some ideas about why. Then this bit in the blue should introduce the two extracts. It's been disputed by historians as to the main reason why the Soviet Union collapsed for years. Extract 1 seems to suggest it was Gorbachev's political reforms that undermined him, causing too much instability, while extract 2 says that the economic problems were just too big to be stopped, and blah blah blah. So in that blue section there, we've put a box around. The two extracts are outlined, and then in the green bit at the bottom, overall, however, extract 1 seems to be more convincing. There's the statement of the answer. So this is very similar to the introductions that you would do for your essays, but here just using the extracts as the two sides of the argument that you're going to make. Likewise, there should be something familiar about the paragraphs that you write. Essentially, you're going to write two paragraphs. You could choose to separate them out a bit if you want, but essentially you're doing two paragraphs. This is how we recommend that works. So in the first paragraph, you would analyze extract 1's argument, or perhaps the extract that agrees with the question. So if that happens to be extract 2, then do that one first. At the start of that paragraph, state what the overall argument of extract 1 is, e.g. the economy collapsed, or Fourth Crusade fell because of Innocent III, or the Glorious Revolution was really revolutionary. Then quote one thing that extract 1 says to make this argument. So if you're talking about the economy, the quote might be, the economy stopped growing. So pick out one thing from the extract where they are making that argument. Then provide some evidence that this quote is credible. So this is your evidence that you're integrating with that. This is true, the growth rate was 0%. Ideally then, weigh up the persuasiveness of this point. For example, this really did cause the collapse because, or it might be that this was not a big contributory factor to the collapse because. It might be that if you can't find evidence for that, I mean, that would not be a great reason for picking the point, but if you can't find evidence for that, or you think there is no evidence for that, obviously that means that you're going to weigh it up by saying, however, there isn't very good evidence for this. So extract 1 says the economy stopped growing, but the evidence doesn't really bear that out. So this is not a very persuasive point. But that idea of quote evidence weighing up, or quote evidence evaluation, is the flow through which you should be writing this paragraph. Aim to do this again twice more, so that in total you have quoted 3 things, you've provided some evidence all 3 times, and you've weighed it up all 3 times. And then finally finish off the paragraph by weighing up the whole argument of extract 1. So that might be, so in conclusion, this extract 1 makes 3 great points that support this argument. Or it might be extract 1 makes a really strong point, but after that, the points that it makes are less good. And so overall, extract 1 is only partially convincing. Let's have a quick look just at how that might look in this paragraph here. And we're not going to read through this paragraph, but here you see at the top, this bit in blue is explaining what the extract claims. Extract 1, and you can see here the quote states that hopeful assumption that market mechanisms could be added to state structure. So this is where we're picking out something from the extract. After that, we want to use evidence to back up the extract. Here's a couple of facts that are put in. This one here, short-term improvements, such as the 9% rise in urban wages, 20% of food was, can't quite read that, still imported. The facts here are to back up what the extract is claiming at the start, and then at the end of this part, and the paragraph actually goes on after this, but the end of this part is weighing up whether the extract is right in this case. It is true to say, but there is no evidence to suggest that this causes the dismantling of the Soviet Union. So it might be that the extract is right in saying what it is, but it's drawn the wrong conclusions about it. They might be right that Innocent III had this particular policy, but that doesn't explain why the Fourth Crusade went off and sacked Constantinople. It might be true that the Toleration Act was passed, but that doesn't mean that this was revolutionary at that time in the 1680s. So that's the structure for your first paragraph. The happy news is that paragraph 2 is the analysis of extract 2's argument, and for that one you use exactly the same structure and pattern as for extract 1. So it's just a repetition that you'd quote and then bring in your evidence and then evaluate, weigh up that point 3 times and then weigh up the whole thing. 3, by the way, is not a magic number. It's not that the exam board insists on you having 3 quotes. It's just, if you have more than 3, you're probably going to start to run out of time. If you have fewer than 3, it looks like you probably didn't get too much out of the extract. So it's just a guideline that we're giving you rather than the law that the exam board has laid down, or a guarantee that there'll be 3 things in the extract. If you can fit more in, amazing. If you can't find 3, don't panic about it, so long as you've written a decent paragraph. Finally, then, of course, after looking at extract 1 and extract 2, your conclusion. And in your conclusion, again, this is very much like an essay conclusion. You're explaining which extract you think has the better argument and why. Now, remember that they're looking for a sustained analysis, and hopefully you've stated in your introduction which extract you think has the better argument. And then at the end of your 2 paragraphs, you've weighed up the 2 extracts. In one of them, you said they've done a great job, great interpretation. And at the end of the other one, you said, well, it's okay. In your conclusion, you're saying, yes, one of these extracts is great and the other one's okay. And I prefer the great one because it has a great argument with really compelling evidence. That is sustained all the way through, that you've driven us along through that argument and you've pointed out the highlights of it all the way through the essay. Here in your conclusion, they want a fully substantiated conclusion. So that is going to look a little bit like this in terms of its length. And again, we're not going to read through this, but I just want to point out the overall structure here. So overall, the political reforms by Gorbachev seem to be more convincing as to why the Soviet Union collapsed. Extract 1 demonstrate this. So here at the start, we're saying extract 1 is the one we prefer. Here then, after that, is just sort of saying, yeah, extract 2, this is what I think about extract 2. It makes a good case, but it's not completely convincing. And then down at the end, unlike extract 2, extract 1 demonstrates this. So here's what I think about extract 2. It's okay in the middle, but just starting by saying extract 1's the best because of this, and finishing by re-emphasizing what it is that extract 1 does that is better than extract 2. And in almost all cases, the classic go-to answer here will be that the extract you prefer, the evidence better fits what it's claiming than the other extract. That's the obvious and easy way to make your argument convincing. So I hope that's useful. Just to recap, your interpretation question needs to finish by judging between the interpretations, and that you need to show that you understand that these 2 historians both have valid views, but that based on the evidence to hand, you consider one of them more convincing than the other. I hope that's useful. We might look at some exemplars in a separate video, so watch out for that. But that's how to structure your interpretation question. Thanks for watching.